strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees, blood on the leaves, breeze, breeze, blood on the leaves, breeze, breeze.
Winter seminar was created, it was a labor of love between Professor Ackerman and I, but we identified that students needed to have a space to talk about truth and reconciliation. So this was sort of the second iteration of our work together. The first was in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd, and so we work with students to talk about race and racial inequality at that time. And so since that time, we've partnered on different projects, but we knew that we needed to have another space that was dedicated to having conversations about not just telling the truth, but what does reconciliation look like, or what could reconciliation look like? So we developed this concept of having a winter research seminar, and it also was connected to the Invisible History Project that was started by Dr. Cole Leonard in the honors program. And so we wanted to utilize the website that was created. We assigned students stories of lynching that happened in Maryland, and they were sort of tasked with telling the stories, providing the narrative for the website. And from there, some students were assigned lynching cases and other students were assigned exoneration cases. And students worked with Erica Harris in the library, and they created narratives that now live on the Invisible History website. So during one of our meetings, students who participated in the very first learning community in 2019, they came, they served on a panel, they talked about their experiences and where they are now. So after that meeting, students in the current winter seminar asked about the possibility of going to Alabama. So I reached out to Monica. I asked if there was additional funding, and she said yes, but we had limited funding. So we decided to take 10 students, and that's how the trip really came about.
The research was a rabbit hole. It started with, when I woke up, I'd gotten the email assigning my person, and curiosity would not let me not look him up. I had to look him up. So I pulled his name up, and the whole time I was secretly like, please give me a wrongful conviction, wrongful conviction. Don't let me get a lynching, because I knew it was going to be difficult to research. I mean, wrongful conviction's not less difficult, but I had a weird thing with taking the seminar is, what if my ancestors were involved? You know, what if a family name came up, or a name I'd heard before in, not that I wasn't willing to face that, but I knew that was something in the back of my head. So that was my first shocker, like, that's my neighborhood, and it happened there. And then I'm reading on, and it said Christmas morning, and then the tears started, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to stop researching because we had class that day. And so I'm like, I have to get myself together so we can do the class, and then immediately after the class I started, and that very first day I probably researched King Johnson until 2 or 3 in the morning. I couldn't stop. I looked at all the newspaper articles. There was so many. There was an overwhelming amount. And then I would try to take details, because I believe it was Miss Lyles that had spoken to us about research, and to say, take a bit of the newspaper information, take that and look into that further. You know, whatever information you can find. Sometimes no information was information. And so I was trying to do that. And it led me into an entire day, minus the 3 hours of class, of looking into Mr. Johnson's story.
Ancestry and newspapers and the articles spoke about it, and they demonized him just like we do now. I just feel like the only bit of his life was in 24 hours.
One highlight is that the person that I researched is my person now. That's a highlight for me, because I feel like he will forever be a part of me. So, I work in Annapolis, Maryland, and where I work, there's a marker there for, I think, 3 people who were lynched in Anne Arundel County. One of them, George Briscoe, I remember. And I never noticed that sign until the winter seminar, when I saw it on one of the slides. And so when I realized that was right in front of my job, the next time I went to work, I stopped and read it and took pictures of it. And when I first started working there, I heard that where I worked used to be a jail. And then I put it all together. Like, I actually go inside this building every time I go to work. And because one part is newer, the other part is the jail. And sometimes to make a quicker exit, I actually walk through the jail portion of where George Briscoe was. And it's just weird to go in that building every day knowing that history.
The winter seminar was important to me because when I was taking Sociology 141, I learned things that I never learned in history. Like, you hear of lynching, but like I didn't know exactly what lynching was, and I wanted to learn more. I felt like I learned so much from Sociology 141 that I wanted to know what lynching was. And I feel like as a white woman that I can give that back and like try to help make a difference by learning stuff that I didn't, so I can teach my daughters and to keep telling people what I learned and to try to make a difference. My highlight would be seeing at the lynching memorial, seeing my person's name, Lewis Harris, and actually like being able to touch his name, even though like it wasn't like a grave or something. Like, it kind of helped close that chapter because like I was so invested wanting to learn and I couldn't find much information on him. So like seeing his name there, it kind of gave me like a relief.
I didn't even know that the museum existed. So I think that it was just, I never expected that I would be able to go see something like that. Also, to be able to have the opportunity to go do something like that is so special because not everybody does. And I don't know, I feel like it was like black girl joy. It was overwhelming and just really, I was the crybaby of the semester. I'm pretty sure I cried the whole time, but it was like tears of joy, and I still would cry again, probably.
I personally think they're important to students, especially nowadays, especially to older students, because our education, well, it's changed a bit now, but our education has majorly been whitewashed, especially when it came to history and social studies. A lot of history concerning Africa, Indigenous America, countries like that, it's only focused from a warped, biased form of history. And I feel like that's very damaging to a lot of people's education, to their opinions, to how they perceive different things. And experiences like this can really open them up to what real history was like without any kind of bias. This was just facts that had to be presented in a cold manner for people to truly grasp.
It's important because without knowledge, nothing will change. So you have to like learn the history of it in order to change what's going on.
That was probably my favorite time of the entire trip. It was the first time that any of those students had moved away from the idea of, that it seemed any of them had moved away from the idea of studying slavery or studying lynching or studying domestic terrorism and violence, to actually recognizing that it's perpetrated on people because some semblance of it had been perpetrated upon them. And that allowed them to move away from the space of empathy or away from the space of, oh, that's a horrible thing, to now I've placed myself in these shoes, and now I've had my agency stripped away. And even though it was only stripped away in a protected setting for a limited, amount of time, if you've never been placed in a space where you can't, you won't, you shall not, it's completely different. So that hour-and-a-half drive from Selma back to Birmingham was the best conversation, because they laughed, they cried, they thought, and most importantly to me, the conversations that they had the day before, where they were just empathetic and they had each other, to lean on, they didn't have that. And they were forced to deal, I think, at a different level of what, all those things meant, and then forced to stack years and years and years upon it. So it was a great conversation.
So they are definitely tough, and as a white student, I will never fully understand what it is to be discriminated against your race. So I think I get more by listening first and then getting my input, because I'm trying to gain as much information as possible from a topic that I can learn about but never fully going to experience to an extent. So it was a little uncomfortable at first, because you're looking at the videos and stuff in the memorial in the museum, and you're like, those people don't look like me, but I feel for them, and to know that the people who did that to them do look like me is a mix between, lack of a better word, I want to say a little bit of guilt and just remorse, and then also it also gives me belief that there is a possibility to do better. Because I don't believe and I don't support what happened to them, I know that there is a chance that we can do better, because there are people who are white who don't have those beliefs.
It gives students the opportunity to show their brilliance. So all of our students are so smart. They have so many experiences, and then you're given the opportunity to step out of the classroom to actually experience these things, and you afford them the opportunity to feel comfortable. You give the students the opportunity to establish community with each other, and again, it's just bringing the intellectual experience into the community, into the experiential experience, and it's just so important for them to do that.
As we started with the seminar, it was like literally removing a cover from your eyes, or like your rose-colored glasses. It was like snatching it away, because after learning it from middle school years, I was not exposed to African American history again, or slavery, and it would came all back. But at a level that I was an adult, and it was different. It was different, like when I was a child, because the biggest thing I learned from the seminar was that just because we are uncomfortable with talking about, or like we're uncomfortable with this talk, is how they make us uncomfortable, right? It doesn't mean that we should ignore it, because we are dishonoring our people who have suffered through this, and we're dishonoring our future generations by ignoring what played a big role in America's history. And so the biggest thing was to stop being numb to this, and still pursue and learn and educate, because just by word of mouth, if you tell people, they still get a better perspective, and you still make a difference no matter how small.
A lot of the images we saw were people standing around believing that what they had was justice, believing that lynching these men and women, that lynching these people was justice. And it's very clearly not. But these people, in their minds, that was the right thing to do. And we know that wasn't. We know that is not justice. I do know, though, that the memorial, that in a way, to me, is justice, because we are telling their stories and doing justice to the pain and suffering they had when they were being terrorized and murdered. And the real justice is acknowledging it and reading their names and immersing yourself in their stories, so that we carry that with us.
Somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for rights.